A volatile weather pattern is about to take place in the United States. And that doesn't just mean we're seeing a pattern shift, it means we're seeing a lot of changes in the day to day as we go through this upcoming week into mid December. I'm tracking a few different storms that'll bring some heavy rain, even some heavy snow, and a lot of temperature shifts that'll make it seem like we're going from one season to another seemingly overnight. So as we go into this forecast, we're going to talk about who's going to be impacted greatest by those storms and what kind of temperature pattern you can expect. We're starting by taking a look at these storm systems coming to the U.S. And I just want to preface this video too with some of you know I'm a big Penn State sports fan. I was at the Big Ten Championship screaming, of course, and my voice is a little bit shot from that. So my apologies, but we can still talk weather well enough where that's what we're going to do right here, beginning with Monday. And here's where we're going to kick things off. We got this Clipper system coming from Canada, moving eastwards. It's going to help to draw some moisture up off the Gulf out here too. A second system is basically developing out there. And we're going to see those two systems begin to meet in the eastern U.S. later on Monday. But in the meantime, I would expect there to be rain across much of the southeast, heavy at times, could be some rumbles of thunder, and some snow across north central U.S. Nothing heavy though. But once we get into the later hours of Monday, you can see those two storm systems beginning to meet out here. Could mean some mixing and could even be a little bit of icing out there across some of the hills and mountains. But really what we're looking at is in the northeast, you can see snow falling across the mountains out there, rain falling closer to the coastline. So northern New England, again, ski country could get a decent snowfall in spots. Looks like rain, though, for most of 95, pretty much all 95 in populated areas. So that's really how we kick things off on Monday. But we're not done there. We're going to see this part of the country really get more active weather-wise, and that's where we're focusing the beginning of the week here. Here's our next system. You can see it riding up the coastline there. There it is, drawing moisture up off the Gulf, that low-pressure system going straight through the mid-Atlantic as well. And this is really gaining strength because at the same time, you can kind of see our heights here. That's a sign that we have a colder air mass dipping in, and it's helping to develop these low-pressure systems on the leading edge here. So that's why we're seeing that more active pattern in the east to start things off. And there's our system bringing rain to much of the eastern U.S. It's going to be heavy. There may be some storms. Temperatures will be rising as well at the surface. But there's also a chance for some snow on the backside. So you just saw that rain on Tuesday. We're moving this into Wednesday. Middle of the week looks really wet. And like I said, on the backside here, so portions of the mid-Atlantic, and we'll see this into northern New England, there could be some snow, and it could in fact be heavy. And this is a key part of the forecast that we will have to watch evolve because it depends on how quickly that cold air gets down towards the surface on the backside of the system. So while you're not seeing a ton of snow on this run, and I don't expect there to be too much, there could be more than what we're seeing here. Just want to note that. We're going to see a pretty decent, potentially squall line on this too. So again, rumbles of thunder possible. Could be a low severe threat, though mainly that'd be farther south down the coastline. And as we get into Thursday, the system begins to exit, but still a lot of wind, a lot of snow moving into Canada. And also you can see our isobars here. Those are those black lines you're seeing right here on the on our map across the mid-Atlantic. That's a sign that we have some very strong wind and some cold air coming in, so much of the country gets quite windy as well. We're now going to shift to the west coast, though, because you're going to see our next system here now as we move into Thursday, Friday, and really the weekend. Our next system begins to arrive on the coastline there. So we're going to see some light rain, some snow in the mountains start things off at the end of the week. But as we head farther into the weekend, you're going to see our system really begin to arrive on the coastline. And here we are on Saturday. That's a lot of rain coming to the California coast, Oregon, Washington as well, and snow in the mountains out there. And we also, at the same time as that, have yet another storm system that'll be drawing moisture out of the Gulf here. This is a ways out, and we're going to need to keep a close eye on both of these as the forecast is going to change. But we also have, of course, just generally active weather continuing in the southeast, and that is going to be perhaps some heavy snow in the west, especially in those mountains, rain closer to the coastline next weekend. So our weather pattern really doesn't rest, and even into next week here, we won't go too far into this, but we still have what is likely to be some storms developing on the lee side of the Rockies, and that's what you're seeing this guy doing here. This is Monday next week, so we won't dive too much into it, but that's your forecast as we stay quite active. I also want to take a look at how much rain and snow may fall here, of course, and we're going to start with the precipitation, which can be rain or snow, but really focusing on the rain, and we're going to see a lot of it fall across the eastern U.S. here through the beginning of the week with that train of storm systems. And what you're seeing is anything outlined in red here. Again, that's a good chunk of the East Coast. That's where we're likely to see, 2 inches of precip or more. Those purple colors, again, even more of the eastern U.S. That indicates an inch or more of precip. So that's where we're going to see our heavy rain out there. But if we move this forward, of course, we're going to keep an eye on the Pacific Northwest And here we are through the weekend. A lot of those same colors, the reds and purples, those are soaking rainfalls, 1 to 2 inches, if not more. And when you're seeing those gold colors pick up, that's enhanced rainfall and even snowfall by the mountains. Those are places that we could see 4 inches or more precip. So that's more so rain, but we can also take a look at snow here as well. And I mentioned it's going to be interesting towards the East Coast. We'll push this forward. And by the way, this stripe you're seeing on Monday out here in the north central part of the country, that's our clipper system, mainly dropping snow in Canada, but it will clip the northern U.S., part of the reason we call them clippers. And you can see as we move it into the end of the week, there's your snow showing up here in the mountains of the eastern U.S. Anywhere you're seeing those dark blue colors, that indicates a 3-inch snowfall or more, so that would be plowable. Really not much at the coastline there, but once again, our lake effect snow machines, pretty obvious signal they're going to pop up again. And it's no surprise as the temperatures drop a lot after our storm systems come through on the east. And that wind's going to be strong coming out of the north-northwest. So we're talking about the potential for feet of snow on those coastlines again. So once again, that's going to be a really, really big and impactful event. Meanwhile, in the Pacific Northwest, we can kind of inspect out here. I mean, you can see the mountains, no surprise. Some of those higher peaks going to pick up feet of snow as well. That's where you're seeing, again, some of the brighter red colors, some of those oranges. So plenty of precip, even down into California, and that's going to come out as snow. But I also want to mention, too, before we take a look at these temperatures, some of the wind, because these areas, a central part of the country, we haven't talked much about, but you can see with that pattern shifting, here we are on Monday, anyway, you're seeing those, purple colors, those are wind gusts of 30 plus, red colors, wind gusts of 45 plus. That's impactful wind. And here we are into Wednesday. Watch our system come in here Thursday. You're going to see those wind gusts really become more widespread, and we can kind of see that. We jumped ahead pretty quickly there, but we can kind of see that really across the north central U.S. and into the northeast as well. That wind really just becomes strong with our system passing through. So an active week of weather for sure, but of course, in addition to the rain and snow and storm systems, I also want to take a look at the temperature changes that are going to arrive and really going to shift our pattern as a whole throughout this upcoming week. Obviously, it's been pretty cold for most of the country as we've moved through the first part of December, really since the end of Thanksgiving. But as we head into the middle of December, that pattern is going to begin to loosen up. And I want to take a look at our upper level air. This really shows us our air masses and the overall changes that are happening behind the scenes in the atmosphere. And what we're seeing here is our colder air mass really begins to move out here. Our ridge in the west begins to break down. You can kind of see these individual storm systems really shaking up the jet stream, kind of loosening things up. That's what's doing the work here. And as we move through this week, there goes that ridge in the west. It really begins to lose us out there. Still a decent ridge, more so out here, shifting a little bit farther north, shifting a bit west. And that opens the door for colder air to dive into the central U.S. here. But it's really not going to be able to lock in. And as we move into the middle and later days of this week, you see this pattern continue to break down. We do have some blocking up here, but it is not quite enough. This colder air is still going to escape out, and our ridge is completely eroded in the western U.S. And this is a sign that now we're going to have a ridging out in the Pacific. We could have more troughing in the western U.S., and this would lead to milder temperatures in the eastern U.S., and we're going to begin to see that take place as we move later into the week. And there it is, exactly as I said. There's our ridging in the eastern U.S., more troughing in the west, and our pattern really flips a lot. So that's just sort of what's happening underneath the hood. We can also take a look at, of course, what we're going to experience closer to the surface here. These are actually anomalies a few thousand feet up, which strongly translate to the ground. And what we're looking at is a much warmer air mass as we begin the week, taking over the eastern U.S. So we're going to be reasonably mild out here. Western U.S. on the cooler side of things, but really just the northwest. Now, as we move into Tuesday, Wednesday, remember I mentioned that cold air mass taking over? Here it is. And you're seeing those deep blue colors and a really sharp cutoff here. That's why we're going to have storm systems develop on the east and right up the coastline. Meanwhile, western U.S., central U.S., you're getting kind of chilly, although it may still remain on the milder side of things if you are east of the mountains in the west, so closer to the coastline. The coastline seems like it may be mild, but the rest of the country quite cold here. There's that cold air spilling in. You can see the east, we lose that warm air quickly after Wednesday. It's going to be a very cold air mass, very chilly in the north central U.S., especially as we head into the middle of the week. But remember, nothing really locks in, so we're talking about big shifts. And although your middle of the week may be cold in the central U.S., and I mean real chilly, notice how quickly that milder air mass takes over. And we're talking about what is going to be a rapidly warming U.S., outside of the East Coast. It will take until next week for things to really warm in the East, perhaps late in the weekend too. And here we are. By the time we get to the weekend, a much, much milder country, and it's going to stay like that actually into next week as well. Temperatures remain above average. So that's one of the bigger changes in our overall pattern here. We can also take a look too at the temperatures at the surface. And here are those temperatures at the ground. Anywhere you're seeing the blue colors, those are temps that are below freezing. You can see that in the west and in the northeast to begin your Monday. But those greens and oranges, I mean, we're talking about highs that could be near 80 in the southeast U.S., Florida included in that as well, beginning the week here on Monday. And you can see the greens, those are actually somewhat mild temperatures. They really take over the eastern U.S. There's that cold air, though, coming into the north central. Here we are on Wednesday. And when we're talking about lows Wednesday here, that may be in the double digits below zero in the north central. Those are 20s below zero in Canada. Still mild in the east, kind of chilly out here in the west. So the mountains keep the coastline safe from any of the real cold. Here we are moving into Thursday. I mean, that is some Arctic air, and I'm not convinced it's going to be in the 20s below zero, but teens below zero out here, very possible in the northernmost portions of the country, central part of the country out there. The cold air really spills in across the eastern U.S. here. Temperatures that may flirt with the 30s in northern Florida, but easily we're below freezing across most of the U.S. here as we begin Friday, the later days of the week. But then our rebound comes into play, and if you watch the north central U.S. here, you're going to see those temperatures begin to become much more mild, and into the weekend, we see 30s and 40s. I mean, look at that. That is so much more mild in the middle of the week. A huge flip, and it'll only take a couple days to completely flip that pattern around. So, of course, big changes this week in the storm systems we're tracking, and just overall in the temperatures that are ahead too. So as we go through this week, remember, if you're in the eastern U.S., think about that active weather to start things off for you guys. Then towards the middle of the week, it's about temperatures shifting from what very mild, we could be close to 60 up to the northeast, to very cold come Thursday, Friday into the weekend. Western U.S., it's not going to be too bad to start the week. If you're on the coastline, it actually is pretty nice this week until we get to the weekend. That's when the rain comes in across the northern half of the Pacific coastline, snow in the mountains. And in the central U.S., while there's not going to be too much active storms, those temperatures are going to shift a lot. The beginning of the week, cold, but not too bad. The middle of the week gets frigid, especially in the north central U.S. But by the time we get to the weekend, that completely shifts, and we're going to see some really big ranges in those temperatures. So wherever you are, it's going to be an active week. You can see the entire pattern beginning to break down and change, and just be ready for the upcoming weather ahead. So I'll leave it at that. We'll see you next time. We do these weekly forecasts every Sunday, and we'll also have some updates in the middle of the week. So subscribe, all that stuff. And of course, if you got any questions or you just want to let me know where you're watching from, because that always helps us tailor these videos, drop it in the comments, and we'll see you next time.